Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here, coming at you with another gameplay impressions video, and today we're going to be taking a look at Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin for the PlayStation 4. This title was sent to me by Bandai Namco so that I could give it a look and tell you guys my opinions on it. Now, this particular video is going to be done in post-commentary, unlike a lot of the gameplay impressions videos that I tend to do, mostly because I really want to focus down on the stuff that I want to talk about and not have to focus as much on the gameplay itself. So the footage in the background might not necessarily match what I'm about to say, because also I don't want to spoil too much of it for you guys so that you can still enjoy it and, you know, have a couple of surprises as you play through the game. So let's talk about Dark Souls 2. I mean, obviously, a lot of people have already talked about Scholar of the First Sin. The reason why it took me so long to make this video is because shortly after I completed the Bloodborne playthrough, I became terribly ill, and I've been without a voice. As a matter of fact, my voice hasn't fully recovered, if you guys can probably tell, those of you that watch my videos on a regular basis. So yeah, I'm still very much in recovery, but I kind of feel up to doing this particular video at this time. So let's get started. What do you need to know about Scholar of the First Sin? Well, the first thing that I would call out to your attention is that there are several versions of Scholar of the First Sin. Now, I'm going to be focusing on the main version, which is the version that has like all of the upgrades and all the new features and stuff like that. And those versions are the PlayStation 4 version, the Xbox One version, or the Steam DirectX, is it 11? Yeah, I think it's DirectX 11 edition. I'm going to put a link in the description if you want to compare like all the editions, like what's in the PS3 edition, what's in the Xbox 360 edition. There's a neat little chart that you guys can actually take a look at, and it tells you everything that is included in those other editions. But I am going to be focusing mainly on the PlayStation 4 edition because that is the one that I have been playing. So, first things first, and it's going to be pretty much a big deal for the consoles, I kind of feel, because this game runs 1080p 60 FPS. Now, I realize that for those of you who've played it on the PC, which happens to be my case as well, it's like 1080p 60 FPS is not really a big deal. The previous version of Dark Souls 2 was already doing that into the PC, as well as it had a bunch of graphical improvements if you used Durante's tool, which right now I'm having a hard time remembering the name for some reason. But yeah, Durante made a graphical upgrades tool, which did a lot of improvements on the lighting and all that. But to see it running on the PlayStation 4 with, you know, 60 FPS, all that stuff, it just looks really nice. There have been upgrades to the lighting engine, which was a big deal because the previous console version felt very dumbed down when compared with the graphics that we were shown in the preview videos and the gameplay videos ahead of the game's release. But even though the lighting engine has been upgraded, I kind of feel like it's still not up to the point that we've seen on those videos that were released prior to the game actually being launched. And the main section that I focus my analysis on is the hallway right before the Mirror Knight, because there were just so many visual effects in that area, and I went by it recently, and I have to say I didn't really feel like it still lived up to those videos, but still, it's a very nice improvement from a graphical standpoint, and if you're coming at this as someone who has played on the PlayStation 3, the graphical update is quite significant. Now, beyond improved graphics, you're also going to be able to have more players simultaneously playing with you in co-op, as well, not really in invasions, because I think you already had a limit of 2 invaders, but right now you can have up to 6 players in the same session. This includes, of course, the host as well. Now, this allows you to have up to 4-player co-op, which previously you could only really do 3-player co-op because you had to leave 1 slot open for the possibility of an invader, whereas right now you got 4-player co-ops and you leave 2 slots open for the possibility of invaders. So that is kind of like how the multiplayer is working. I've participated in quite a few co-op sessions with other players, with the 4 players, and something that I was really glad to see is that unlike the PlayStation 3 version, when you have 4 players on screen, the game isn't like killing itself to output a couple of frames. It is still running solid 1080p, 60 FPS, no problems. It almost feels like it's not even stressing the console at all, which is a very good sign. So the co-op is great. I've heard reports that you might be able to have up to 3 Bell invaders, but I've only experienced 2 up until this point, so I'm not sure if that is possible or not. But yeah, definitely having more players on your sessions is a pretty cool thing. It also allows you to summon just a bunch of NPCs if you want to, because there are more NPCs that you can summon to help you with bosses. There's a ton more NPCs. As a matter of fact, there's several bosses which used to only have 1 NPC. They now have 2 of them available for you to take into the boss fight, which makes a lot of the bosses considerably easier, which then makes me wonder why exactly is it that nearly every other person I've heard talk about this game seems to have this preconceived notion that, oh, the game is so much harder now, and I'm just like, no, it's not. Quite the contrary, it actually feels a lot easier because there's so many more NPCs that you can summon if you want to have that option. However, if you don't want to have that option, I still feel that there's a ton of stuff in the game that makes it a lot easier. However, let's keep going through the list of features. What else is new? So you got the Lost Crowns DLC included. So all of the stuff like the Sunken Crown, the Crown of the Ivory King, the Crown of the Iron King, all of that stuff is included in the package with the Scholar of the First Sin. Now, it doesn't really work the way it used to work with the previous version of Dark Souls, because the way it worked with the previous Dark Souls is, you make the purchase of the DLC, they give you the key that gives you access to the DLC, which is a physical item in-game that allows you to go through the doors that then lead to the DLC. And you would just go to the DLC whenever you felt like it. Like, you could literally run up to the section where the DLC gets started and just get started on DLC, except for the Crown of the Ivory King, because that was in the winter section. You guys know what I'm talking about. But regardless of that, in the Scholar of the First Sin, you will have to hunt down the keys. You will have to find these keys. They will be in-game. They're fairly easy to find, with the exception of the Sunken Key. It took me a while because it's in a place that it usually takes me a while to get to. Not a place that's hard to get to, mind you, but it's a place that I tend to leave to the end of the game for some reason. But I'm not going to spoil you on any key locations or anything like that. I'll leave that all up to you. Just know that if you go into the game and you try to go into the DLC and you're like, why the hell isn't this DLC working? It's probably because you haven't found the key yet, and you need to find the key in order to gain access to the DLC. So you'll have to actually explore through the game and whatnot. Beyond the DLC, there is a new NPC. A bunch of the NPCs that you've seen in the DLCs are going to be available for summoning in the base game now, for boss fights and stuff like that. Also, in terms of DLCs, I don't think that they changed a whole lot of stuff. At least I didn't really dive too much into the DLCs. I just went to the Sunken Crown area just to get an idea, and it seemed to me like everything was pretty much the same. So I don't think they changed a lot of the stuff in the DLCs. They focused most of the changes in the main game. So there's a new NPC who is the Scholar of the First Sin. Now, I could just spoil it for you and tell you who this NPC is, and I'm sure that someone in the comment section is going to do it. So be careful if you are reading through the comment section, but I will not tell you who this NPC is. However, I will tell you, if you are interested in the lore aspects of Dark Souls 2, this is an NPC that you're going to want to interact with quite a bit. Also, your interactions with this NPC will determine whether or not you have the option of seeing the new ending, because the new ending will depend upon your interactions with the Scholar of the First Sin. The Scholar of the First Sin is going to be showing up at multiple stages as you are playing through the game, and he will give you dialogues about lore and stuff, and he will ask you questions. As you answer these questions, your answers will determine whether or not you will be able to see the new ending. And with that, obviously, like I said, there is a new ending, but to be honest, I don't feel like the new ending is that big of a deal, because it's... How do I say this without spoiling it? It's almost like Dark Souls 1, okay? And that's all I'm going to say. If you finish Dark Souls 1, you know how the two endings work. Two endings work very much similar in Dark Souls 2. So there you go. Now, beyond all this stuff that I already mentioned, they changed the placement of a lot of the enemies in the game. Now, this not only changes the enemies that you'll be fighting, the order in which you will be fighting them, but it also makes more sense from a lore standpoint where some of the enemies are located. Like, a very quick example is you will actually see the Hyde Knights in the Hyde's Tower of Flame. I'm still not sure if that's how you pronounce it, if it's Hyde, if it's Haiti, whatever. You will actually see those Hyde Knights in their Hyde Tower of Flame, which was something that you didn't have before. There's quite a few of them there. So that's all I'm really going to say, but there are more enemy placement changes like that. Beyond switching the enemies in those locations, several of your enemies will also patrol areas now. This almost seems like it was inspired by Bloodborne, because if you guys take a look at Bloodborne, a lot of the enemies in Bloodborne actually patrol areas and whatnot, and that was kind of a big deal, because usually in Souls games, enemies would just, for most of the time, would just like lie and wait for you to arrive and then react to your presence, whereas here there are a lot of enemies patrolling the areas, kind of like Bloodborne. Beyond that, they've added a lot more stone statues, the ones that block your way and that you require ivory, what do you call it? No, not ivory, fragrant branches of yore in order to open the different paths. But they also give you fragrant branches of yore earlier in the game. So what this does is it gives you more options of where you want to go earlier in the game, but as you make those choices, it is going to lock down other areas. Very quick example, without spoiling too much. You want to get to the ruined sentinels? You're going to need a fragrant branch of yore to get there now, because there's a dude right in front of the door that you're going to need to unlock. And there's a ton more like that. And it also seems that the amount of fragrant branches of yore that you're going to get are not going to be enough to... they're not going to be enough to remove all of the statues out of your way. Or, well, they are enough to remove all the statues out of your way, but they're not enough to open all the optional statues. So you're going to have to really choose which statues you want to get and which statues you're not going to get. So you'll need to prepare for a little bit of disappointment. However, you know, previous statues like the one in is it Petrified Forest? I kind of forget. Clouded Forest, Misty Forest. Damn, I forget the name of the location. But the one in there that's got like the lion set and whatnot, that one still has another fragrant branch of yours. So if you want to get that one, be sure to get it. But a lot of stuff has changed. And the good thing about these changes, they both change the flow of the game, as well as it gives you a fresh start feeling almost. Like if you guys remember, back before Dark Souls 2 was released, I started doing the cherry playthroughs on Dark Souls 1, and the intention of that was to get, you know, a fresh feeling, to see enemies where I hadn't seen them before, to get that first playthrough experience almost. And this is a nice thing, because if you already finished Dark Souls 2, it's not going to be exactly the same experience you had previously. There's going to be a lot of stuff that feels new. But the game in its essence is still the same. The bosses are the same, and the flow changes though. Like the path that you take to visit locations and whatnot, it changes quite a bit. And on top of that, you're also going to see a lot more of the Pursuer Knight. Like if I remember correctly, in Dark Souls 2, not counting DLC, because I only been through the DLC through all the DLCs once. Haven't really been through them multiple times. But not counting the DLC, I remember that you only saw the Pursuer Knight twice, if I remember correctly. Well, you're going to be seeing a lot more of him, which again, just makes sense, because it was the job of the Pursuer Knight, if I remember the lore correctly, to chase down the Chosen Undead and to hunt him down. So you're going to be seeing a lot more of him, and let's just leave it at that. There's also new enemies that you haven't seen before. There's a couple of new items, and a lot of the item descriptions have been changed to add some lore for the Scholar of the First Sin NPC. In terms of the NPCs that you would get like for quests and stuff, like let's say Pate, Creighton, Lucatiel, those kinds of NPCs, a couple of them have been moved around. Don't ask me why, I don't understand what the point of that was. Their locations kind of make a little bit more sense, I guess. But if you are missing one of them, like if you knew exactly where they were in the previous version of the game, you will run into situations where it's like, this NPC's not where he's supposed to be, and you might completely miss him. So be attentive to that, because yeah, if you're trying to complete all the quests and do all the stuff, that is going to be something that you want to pay attention to. A couple of examples that I can tell you off the top of my head is that Lucatiel was moved, at least on one of her locations, and Creighton was definitely moved to a completely different location on one of his quest points. So pay attention to that in case you're trying to do the whole completionist thing. You're going to have to really look through the map or just look online on the wikis or something. Because, I mean, let's face it, at this point, most people who wanted to play Dark Souls 2 will probably have played it. So, I mean, if you're just trying to complete it, I think it's okay for you to take a look at the wikis. I mean, but if you're a purist, just make sure to explore the maps really well, because a couple of times you will find them in different locations. Some of the game's areas have become easier, in my opinion, despite the overwhelming majority of people, like I said, constantly saying that the game is actually a lot harder. I don't really agree with that. Some of the areas became easy. Most of the areas remained about the same level of difficulty, and Shrine of Amana became even worse, if that was even possible, because I hate Shrine of Amana. And when I went to Shrine of Amana last time, I was just like, this is so much more aggravating than I remember for some reason, and I hate that friggin' place. And if you ever go to Shrine of Amana, my basic suggestion is get yourself a bow. I mean, that was the basic suggestion before, but you kind of were able to navigate it without a bow, if I remember correctly. Now, damn near impossible. My suggestion, get yourself a bow and just get through that area as fast as possible, because yes, I do believe it has become quite a bit worse. There were a couple of balance changes in bosses, but to be honest, I haven't felt most of them. The bosses felt very much the same as I remember. One of the bosses that I can definitely tell was changed is the Ancient Dragon. I think that's his name. The Ancient Dragon no longer one-shots you with his flame attack, which I know a lot of people are going to have a problem with that. Me personally, no, because I feel that fight... I've always felt that fight was quite a bit random. It was a lot of randomness, because it's like, you missed your run by like a millimeter, you're dead. And that was never really something that I really appreciated about that fight, and that change to me was very much a welcome change. But yeah, there were quite a few balance changes, and apart from that, there have also been some changes that I would call convenience changes. Like, for instance, you get an early Dull Ember, which, for those of you who don't know, the Dull Ember is the only Ember that exists in Dark Souls 2, because unlike Dark Souls 1, you don't have to hunt down like 100 different Embers in order to upgrade your weapons. All you really get is this one Ember. You hand it off to one of the blacksmiths, and then he will be able to infuse your weapons with any kind of enchantments that you want, like fire enchantment, lightning enchantment, all that stuff. You get that a lot earlier now. Like, as soon as you get to the Lost Bastille, if you come through the route where you're carried by the giant bird, it's just gonna be there waiting for you. Apart from that, you can also get the Bastille key without necessarily needing to fight the gargoyles, which is kind of a big deal. They seem to have removed like the key items from that specific section of the Bell areas where you're forced into, fighting PvP, which makes a lot of sense in my opinion. And another convenience change is, for instance, when you get the Dragon Eyrie, the ladder shortcut is already active. So there's a lot of convenience changes which are particularly useful if you are doing multiple builds. Like if you just want to have multiple characters, the game is kind of easier to navigate through, in my personal opinion. It feels a lot more streamlined and just kind of built for that kind of replayability where you just build multiple, where you just experiment with multiple builds, and this also allows you to have just multiple builds ready for PvP encounters, which now, as you can see, you have up to 6 players online, so there's a lot more PvP possibilities. Apart from that, there was obviously still the durability glitch, which was present on the PC, is also present on the consoles, but I do believe it is being patched out, which is about damn time. For those of you who don't know about the durability glitch, it is essentially when you hit an enemy after he's dead. So like, let's say an enemy needed 2 hits to die. You hit him 3 times, your weapon just takes a massive durability loss because of the fact that the game was originally designed to run at 30 frames a second, and the damage on your weapon was calculated based on the frame rate. Don't ask me why they did that, but twice the frames, twice the damage to your weapon. So whenever you hit something that is dead, or I've even noticed when I'm doing co-op, if I hit other players, it seems to really, really lower the durability of your weapon. So just be careful about that, and you should be fine, particularly about overhitting enemies, like hitting enemies more than what you need to. That is definitely going to lower the durability of your weapon quite a bit. Now, in terms of Dark Souls 2 versions, in my opinion, this is the better version. Like, if you're thinking, should I just get the regular version? Should I get this one? This one is obviously the better one to get, since the enemy locations make more sense. A lot of the stuff is a little bit more streamlined in terms of, you know, the path progression and whatnot, which in a way it's good, because Dark Souls 2 is still a little bit convoluted, and to be honest, even a little bit too long. Because the game is just seriously long. Just to give you guys an idea, I finished the game and I died a bunch of times, lost a bunch of souls. But I did repeat a couple of bosses, did a little bit of co-op here and there, but nothing too, nothing too extreme. And I'm at 2.5 million soul memory, for those of you who know what that is, and at level 141. I haven't even touched New Game Plus or the DLC. So I've gotten a lot more souls than what I remember from the previous version of the game. I've also lost a bunch of souls, so there's that. They no longer have the dropped the rings that, if you guys remember, there was the Ring of Life, which if you died you would come back to human, the ring would break. I haven't found any of that ring in a drop version. But Falcon the Outcast still sells one, so you can still get it there. But I haven't found it in any drops or anything of the sort. So those of you who had a big issue with that ring, they didn't really remove it. It's still there, but it's no longer as easy to obtain, I guess. But yeah, this is definitely the best version to get of Dark Souls 2, whether you're getting the PlayStation 4 version, the Xbox One version, or the PC DirectX 11, which to me makes almost no sense. The fact that there's a PC version that's the DirectX 11. If the only console you have to play is like if you're a recent adopter of the PlayStation 4, I think it's great that Dark Souls 2 is available there. As a matter of fact, I would very much like it if Dark Souls 1 was there as well as Demon Souls. I think those would be great additions to the library of the PlayStation 4 as well, but for now, all you're getting is Dark Souls 2. So personally, I like it, but there is a fact that a lot of the community didn't really like Dark Souls 2. Is this going to change their opinion? Like, do I feel that this version is going to convert people that previously didn't like Dark Souls 2? No. It's essentially the same game. It's got a couple of more content here and there, but it is essentially the same lore. It is essentially the same levels. It has essentially the same things that would turn those people off. So that's my personal take on Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin. There's been a lot of people asking whether or not I'm going to do a full playthrough of it. Of course I will, at some point. I mean, not maybe immediately right now, but I will eventually do a playthrough of it. Maybe even a New Game Plus one. The main issue that I have right now is that if I go into New Game Plus, I still want to do all the DLCs that I haven't done. And if I go into New Game Plus after that, I'm going to be like level 150 or something, which feels kind of ridiculous in a way, but the difficulty might just be appropriate. I don't know. I don't know what the deal is going to be with that. Maybe my build was a little bit too efficient because I did this build where I just wanted to like get all the trophies and stuff. And I've pretty much gotten all the trophies apart from the spell trophies because, you know, those are a little bit harder to get. But yeah, that's going to be it for this video, guys. I will eventually do a full playthrough of it. I'm still trying to make up my mind if it's going to be in New Game Plus or in regular game, what the deal is going to be with that. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. Leave me all the comments, feedback, all that kinds of good stuff in the comment section below. And I'll see you in the next one.